A huge 1 year's worth of subscriptions was donated on Patreon by Grindstone Coffee and Donuts, and I'm very thankful for the dedication to the channel. Minwu White Mage versus Varys, Xancha, and partners Ikrashidiki and Togo. Two-lander with the Signet into the Archaeomancer's map should be fine, so we'll keep this. We've got Walking Ballista as part of a combo as well. We use the Agatha's Soul Cauldron in this list. I don't have Heliod, because we've all seen Heliod Walking Ballista a million times, and it's a bracket 4 specific combo apparently, and this is bracket 3. Although we're going to be going faster in this game apparently, because just drew into Enlightened Tutor, which means we could get the Soul Cauldron and go quite fast. I might as well explain it to you here in the early game, seeing as how we might be seeing it soon enough. Walking Ballista in the bin, exile it with the Soul Cauldron. Then anything with a plus counter on it, such as Voice of the Blessed, will be able to remove its plus counters and deal damage. And if we've got something like Minwu that has lifelink, then that will be lifelink damage that's pinging with the Walking Ballista ability, and you'll have infinite plus counters and therefore infinite pings. So that's loosely what we're aiming for here, but this is a fun Soul Sisters build if we don't want to go for the combo. So I'm not going to go for the Enlightened Tutor just yet. We need to fix our mana a bit better first. I did ask for bracket 3 casual fun here, so I don't know if I should be doing the combo this early anyway. It is a 3-card combo in all fairness, but there'll be a tutor involved. Anyway, 2 planes into hand and 1 onto the battlefield straight away, so we can still hold up the Enlightened Tutor if we like. Togo hits play for the first time. Xancha's hit play and ended up under the control of the green player, who's played Varys this turn, got down the Druid class on the previous turn. So I think we're just aiming to get down our commander next turn really. Trying to play nice and go slow. There's Ascend from Avernus. If we manage to get into enough mana, we can reanimate some stuff. Let's go for the Minwu. Invigorating Hot Spring from the partner player, followed by a Surveil. So that is landfall, and we'll make the first rock token and puts a plus counter on the Togo over here, giving it haste. The Rakdos player drops the Nazgul, so he's going to be tempted by the ring for the first time, and that means it triggers itself and puts a plus counter on itself. This has to become the ring bearer, so a legendary creature, currently a 2/3 death touch. So we'll have to see if we take 5 commander damage from the Xancha again. And okay, deciding to spread the damage this time after playing himself a Wandering Troubadour. So he's ventured into the dungeon, and doing that twice. It was Yawning Portal to gain a life, and now it's dungeon level, Scry 1. Alright, there's an Aetherflux Reservoir as well. So do we have to start looking at Voice of the Blessed here? Maybe get in a Selfless Spirit as well. And then next turn, if the board stays intact as it is, maybe we just stop playing nice and go for broke on the combo. So play out the Mind Stone as opposed to holding up the Enlightened Tutor. That will allow us into the Selfless Spirit. We'll have Clerics in play to put plus counters on with our commander. And obviously this one can protect our stuff by making them indestructible. And we'll see if we can get through this Togo. We gain life either way. Decides to let it through as we assumed, so plus counter on the Voice of the Blessed twice, and then the other 2 get 1 each from the commander. So we've got a couple of 4/4s. This still has 2 toughness, so it's going to be weak to the rock. If he's worried about us consistently swinging in over here, then he might have to point that at the Selfless Spirit. Alright, so Massacre Girl, Known Killer. This is the Wither one. So yeah, he's after the Togo dealing damage with the rocks, and it will be Wither damage, which we don't want to deal with. Another rock being created for the Togo. Another Nazgul for the Nazgul player, which means they're tempted by the ring again, a plus counter on each of them. So now the ring bearer is difficult to block, and you loot when it attacks. Everflowing Chalice, kicked once, will tap for 1 mana. So if our opponents continue to tap out, we're going to be looking pretty good. We're probably alright against the green player, although we could have artifact removal. And they did swing in there. I couldn't see who they swung in at because it bugged out a little bit. And they didn't have to loot because they turned this one into the ring bearer. So they didn't get to see an additional card when they attacked there. Anyway, Archaeomancer's map triggers without any lands in play. They gain a life from their Saga, 2 life, and draw a card with the Xancha. Anyone can activate that ability, so the green player's doing it himself. And then playing an Arboreal Grazer, triggering his commander, so goes into the Goblin Bazaar to make a treasure token. Does manage to get a landing tapped off the Grazer. That is a Rogue's Passage, makes stuff unblockable. And we're going to have to go for Enlightened Tutor during the upkeep here. 5/5 swings in at us again, so that's 10 commander damage. And the Wandering Troubadour triggers again at the end step, so venturing into the dungeon, they have to go to the lost level to scry 2. And here we go. Kind of feel bad doing this because, like I said, I did ask for bracket 3 casual fun, but if we've drawn into the cards, then we've drawn into the cards, and I might not get another chance to show you the combo anyway, so I haven't played with Agatha's Soul Cauldron ever since it released, but it does have a lot of combos that it can go after. So doing that during the upkeep means we draw into it here, and we can go Walking Ballista for 0 mana, which means it comes down as a 0/0 with no plus counters, goes straight into the bin. The Rakdos player is holding up priority here. Oh, toughness was less than 1, so Masker Girl draws a card. Yeah, there could be some free exile, free removal, something like that, so that's something to be wary of. But there's no decent attacks for us to gain life here, unfortunately. I suppose we could go Indestructible on the Selfless Spirit, swinging with this to get the additional plus counter, although the Soul Cauldron will put one on there. I'm just thinking about responding to anything our opponents might do. Let's just go for the Cauldron during the first main. Sacrifice Walking Ballista under that, and this will give anyone with a plus counter the ability to ping, but it's a lifelinker that we want to be giving the ability to. I'll put a plus counter on Minwu. And now that Walking Ballista is under there, we've got the remove a plus counter ping ability. So we just go infinite. So it's remove a counter, ping someone, and the direct pings do count with lifelink and infect and stuff like that. So gain a life, and it will put a plus counter on all of our clerics, as well as Voice of the Blessed itself. And yeah, I'm just going to quit and let my opponents continue to play it out. In fact, I'll even continue to show you the gameplay, just in case I don't manage to get another Minwu game that doesn't just devolve into this. And we'll see what our opponents do with regards to second place. If the client wants to actually concede for us, there we go. Another Druid class hit in play, this time for the partner player. Drops a land into that, so gains a life, makes another rock token, and manages to equip with a rock, so now the Masker Girl is going to be a real threat with the, what is it called, Wither? Yeah, with the Wither effect. Anyway, Masker Girl is also equipped with a rock, and this is a bounce land, so it taps for 2, meaning that both of these can throw rocks around. Ramosian Greatsword, +3, +1 and trample with an equip of 2 on that. Decides to throw it onto the Ring Bearer, so we'll see. He must be deciding to loot this time. That makes his Ring Bearer a trample 6/5 with Death Touch, so it just gets through anyway basically. Decides on the rock player, changes his mind and goes into the right, and decides to discard Garner to that. Arboreal Grazer jumps in the way to block 3 of the 6 damage. The green player, getting some double mana with Nissa Who Shakes the World, still has 3 lands held up, but will be able to untap one and turn it into a man land. And he's cast a spell there, so it is Runestone Caverns. Exile the top 2 cards of your library, you can play them. Seeing in the exile zone, Elvish Visionary to cantrip, and you find a cursed idol. So can destroy something or make a treasure and venture into a dungeon for 2. And decides now to go for you find a cursed idol. I think he made a treasure token with that, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's Deep Minds, he's just frantically trying to complete the dungeon. Scry 3 with that. Not worthy the glaring spotlight at some point, and Thornbite Staff have hit the bin. Maybe Thornbite Staff was in play and I missed it, because I'm not sure why you'd discard that otherwise. Anyway, putting 3 plus counters on a land, and untapping it, it can still tap for mana. And that's what he does straight away. So with 3 cards in hand, he's got 5 mana available. And that is an unnatural growth in order to better swing in. So this will now be a 10/10 commander. And I suppose he doesn't mind throwing it in here towards the Wither. Although there's going to be a rock before that happens. This can easily be shot out of the air. Well, it's not in the air, but you get what I mean. 2 toughness, goes down to the wither. Alright, and had no intentions of blocking, so debuffs this. It goes from a 3-3 up to a 6-6. Better than taking 10 commander damage, I suppose. He's taking the 6 regardless. And he doesn't swing in with his own commander. He doesn't want to leave Nissa defenseless. Decides to activate this. He can play an additional land on each of his turns, and he's got another bounce land. So he might want to bounce this to its own ability, if he's only got 1 bounce land left in the deck, because then he can consistently make the rocks. Decides instead to bounce a tapped basic, which he'll probably play again here. So he's just wanting to keep accelerating his mana. Got 3 rocks in play, which are unequipped at the moment, but you can afford to equip and throw all of them as it stands now. Still 6 cards in hand over here. Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, into play for the Rakdos player. Just basically acts like a prison effect, stop players attacking you. Unnatural growth triggers on every combat, so this being buffed up to a 6-6. I'd be swinging the Nazgul over at Nissa personally, because he has to choose between the Planeswalker and his commander then, and it's likely that Nissa would go down. Okay, sending the 4-5 in there, and the other Nazgul, the 6-5, loots with the ring again, and gives up on another Nazgul, curiously. He could have triggered the ring again with that. Alright, it looks as though his Planeswalker's gone down, and the commander. Maybe he didn't realise that the sword gave trample. Not sure why he'd give up on his commander there. Anyway, there's a Humble Defector, does not have haste, so can't get the card draw with it. Obviously lost the double mana with Nissa, and decides on getting Varys into play again. Still able to cast a spell with it, thankfully, so Shigeki will complete the dungeon, which means he gets Mad Wizard's Lair, draw 3, reveal them, cast 1 without paying the mana cost, and he gets a wolf here, I think, from the commander. Yeah, a 2-2 green wolf, which he gets into before the unnatural growth. Yeah, I can't remember what creatures he had in play there. I'm not sure he did actually draw into anything there. He's got 6 cards in hand regardless. You have the pleasure of being able to rewind a few seconds and pick up on what I missed. A rock being thrown over at the human elf ranger, but that does have ward 1, so yeah, he still managed to get the -2/-2 on there. So obviously must have paid the ward. And there is an Ancient Green Warden, so now he gets double landfall triggers, and he can play lands from the graveyard. So there we go, plays a land. He's got a mountain in the graveyard to play as well if he likes. Gains a life twice, gets 2 rocks per landfall as well. Equips up to the Masker Girl, another rock, and then manages to play another land. That was a Scry land, Temple of Malady. So gets double Scry triggers on that as well, potentially getting rid of 2 lands, or 2 cards he doesn't like in general off the top. But again gets 2 life and 2 rocks. The Rakdos player decides to draw with the Defector and hand it over to the green player. And after that, a Morbid Opportunist will only trigger once a turn, but if creatures die, he will at least draw to it. And speaking of that, it is a cut down onto the Shigeki, so draws with the Morbid Opportunist for turn. Scrappy Bruiser isn't one I've seen. Whenever this creature attacks, another target attacking creature gets +2 and trample. Return it to its owner's hand at the end of combat. And turns everything into the right. He's worried about the green player, or maybe he's worried about the rock player and doesn't want to suffer his wrath. Drawing 2 cards and handing the Humble Defector over here, so if they just pass it around the table every time, then everyone's drawing more cards. A land will gain a life once again with the Druid class. Hasn't leveled that up yet. 8 cards in hand though, and taps out into a Tarask. So it has haste and ward 10 as long as it was cast. And when it attacks, it fights a creature. So they're back into the dungeon. It is Yawning Portal, gain a life. And this is doubled up to a 20/20. Doesn't have trample, thankfully, for our opponents, but they are going to be encouraged to block here. So swings in down the middle. There is going to be a Tyrant to contend with. I think I'd be blowing up the Morbid Opportunist before it sees anything else die. Yeah, and he does have to fight a defending creature. Okay, he's fighting a Death Toucher there. So, yeah, he took down the Nazgul, but he took down his own Tarask as well. Wrong move. So, triggered the Morbid Opportunist and gave our opponent a free Ogre. I think he'll take that. Still 7 cards in the green player's hand at least. A Mayhem Devil is a really good one with treasure. I don't suppose it's too bad with the rocks either. Decided not to throw any rocks around during the previous turn cycle. A Quicksmith Genius, whenever an artifact you control enters, you can rummage and then plays a land for double the triggers again. It looks as though he's played the Mountain from his graveyard. Might be during turns like this that he wishes he'd bounce the bounce land to its own ability. Suppose he could rummage a land into the bin and play it still. And that's what he's done. He's got a couple of fetches, so he'll be able to consistently make landfall with the Marsh Flats. Instead decides on the basic. So lots of rocks and still a decent amount of mana held up as well. Equipping up the Ancient Green Warden as well. So far it's the Green Warden, Masker Girl and the Toggo. And then plays himself, what was that? An Innocuous Researcher. That has an attack parlay trigger. And he can untap lands, but he will be unable to cast spells if he likes. Which means he'd just be concentrating on throwing the rocks around. He's equipped up the Mayhem Devil at some point as well. So here's the trigger from the Researcher. It'd be interesting to see if he decides to do that. He's got 5 cards in hand he could be playing. He does decide on it, so he can't cast spells during his next turn, but like I said, the rocks can be thrown around still and equipped. Humble Defector, the Jund player, drew with that as well. So once again, it's been activated by the Rakdos player and passed around the table in a very fair manner. Managing to swing in with the Scrappy Bruiser. These two are just going in against each other. They should be really trying to team up on the rock player. It seems as though it's this guy's to win. Anyway, swings in the token to the left, the other two to the right, and targets the raccoon towards the ogre. And in response to that, a rock is thrown at the token. So it's 2 damage from the rock, 1 damage from Mayhem Devil onto that seemingly. Don't think I would have worried too much about taking the 3 damage from a token, but I suppose it triggers his Masker Girl for a card draw. Also triggers Morbid Opportunist for a card draw as well. I did say that the big dinosaur should have been dealing with this. Anyway, this bumps up to a 7-4 with Trample, but it will be bounced back to hand. And decides on taking all the damage and going down to 20. Alright, and a Blasphemous Act makes a bit of sense, so rocks are going to be thrown around now, directly to face I imagine. So as punishment for the Blasphemous Act, 2 damage, and 1 damage from Mayhem Devil. He's trying to kill this off before it sees anything else die. This only triggers once a turn anyway though. Although I suppose the minus counters means that Masker Girl will draw some cards on the way out, because this does not trigger just once a turn. The girl throws her rock directly at his face and Mayhem Devil again onto the Opportunist. And it's noteworthy that this guy was obviously setting up to get all the rocks down. He won't actually be able to cast any creatures next turn in order to have them equipped up with these things, so looks as though he's taking the next turn off. Toggo does the same thing and finishes off with Mayhem Devil, the Opportunist. Masker Girl draws. So that takes Humble Defector out of the equation as well. Xancha, Sleeper Agent, back into play again. And again hands it over to the green player, who has 11 points of commander damage with Xancha over at the Jund player. While he's unable to do anything about it for a couple of turns, it might be best to get rid of him. This will be doubled up to a 10-10, don't forget. So it looks as though the rock player has gone from a commanding position to getting taken out next turn. The green player drops an Arcane Signet. And Xancha, Sleeper Agent, yeah, I forgot he can do that. Any player can lose 2 life and draw. He might as well if he's doing nothing else. So does it a second time. Courser of Krufix for the green player. He's at 14 life there. Reveals Ulamog the Defiler. Prosperous Innkeeper to gain some more life, and comes in with the treasure token. Noteworthy that the man land did go down to the board wipe as well, so he's down a land there as well. Fierce Empath, he shuffles away the Ulamog, curiously. I suppose he can't afford it. Yeah, I think with the treasure token he actually could have afforded 10 mana for the Ulamog, so I might have drawn into that personally. Obviously I don't know what my opponent's game plan is here though. So he tutored out Endray's Forerunners instead, Baby Craterhoof, and manages to play another land, so gain some more life. He's got two means of gaining life now with the enchantment and the enchantment creature, and again this is a 10/10, so pairs up nicely with the 11 commander damage already on that player. And this is the exact tactic of the Xancha player. Obviously can't exactly rely on the fact that an unnatural growth will hit play, but took out this player for him, and we're down to a 1v1. A Thriller Possibility, discarded a Madness card, that is Big Game Hunter. I think it's 1 to play and you blow up a big creature, so maybe he's just using that to get a body into play. Okay, he's pointing it at his own commander, so wants to remove the card draw from the table. Replays Kazul from the previous turn, obviously bounced it before the board wipe. And there we see Faithless Looting, draw 2, discard 2. One of the rare red loot cards as opposed to Rummage. Gets rid of a basic and Chaos Warp. And so the Endray's Forerunners not quite as good as it might have been, thanks to the Kazul. Although he's only going to get 1/3/3 with this. After the draw phase, reveals a Sylvan Anthem. Plays the land straight away, he's nearly back up to 20 already. Yeah, I do wonder about that Ulamog, if it would have been worth getting that down. Okay, and yeah, with that, the Rakdos player just decides to scoop on us. Yeah, not sure why that was. I don't think the game was over. There was another few turns in it at least, but hey ho, that's that. Hopefully you don't find that too disappointing. I'm not really sure why he scooped there. But anyway, we got to show the Minwu combo. If you want to see Minwu again, but in more of a Soul Sisters type game, which is what it's really meant to do, then you must let me know as ever in the comments. Can't imagine this being too popular a commander, to be honest. But I will listen to the feedback as I always do. Massive thank you to the patrons for their financial support of the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.